So I think unlike other pocket parks as we can see them emerging right now, sitting out areas have been a planning tool already for quite a while. So in fact, they have been a planning tool since after World War II, right? Due to this, they have been addressing a lot of very different issues that came up in the city, right? For instance, one of the things where that in the political planning of Hong Kong, where the city really sprung up, right, and exploded, they were recommendations. They were not really called sitting out areas back then, but there were different recommendations which types of land can be used for like these sort of smaller public urban spaces, for this neighborhood urban spaces, right? So we can really trace back their history as a planning tool. Specifically to the city, right? But I do think in tracing this history, we can learn a lot from how we can actually in future propose small public open spaces, right? Because at the moment, Hong Kong is maybe still an extreme example of density, right? But we are like growing more and more cities which have to deal with these issues of densities and have to address how we deal with these leftover spaces. It is a typological analysis we are doing. However, we have really tried to understand that networks which can emerge of that, right? And these networks we have really also discussed with sort of our peers and our colleagues. In the book, we have actually our guest authors, Alain and Ling Su, they address this topic as well. They actually take our spaces, which we refer to them as sort of this in-between pocket parks, right? And they go one step further and say they research actually the possibilities which can emerge from the in-between, right? So they look into sort of the three-dimensional pedestrian network in Hong Kong and how those spaces could actually benefit for a cooler pedestrian infrastructure through the city, which is quite often, very humid and hot. So it is really sort of about these conversations we're having with our peers or other scholars. We're trying to expand on the potential these spaces have as a network. They really need a more site-specific way to do design guidelines. They need to be designed more site-specifically in order to allow more greening, allow more amenities, to get more out of that spaces, right? Rather than just being sort of the utilitarian design most of them are having at the moment. I think they can have an effect in a very positive way on a pandemic and post-pandemic setting. This is not really based on quantitative data or at all our research, rather than on observation. But we can see them very populated over the last year, right? These spaces very often they were used throughout the day from elderly people who sit out there. Now we can really observe children playing in them, and at the same time, the often so strict regulations of, not playing ball, not cycling, no hawking, no music, all that became a bit more, let's say, relaxed during the pandemic. And I think that can be a great potential to actually look into what these spaces can do further. Another interesting fact I thought about receiving this question about the pandemic is actually looking back at the history of Hong Kong. In fact, one of the first really public open spaces in the city, not a sitting out area, but still a sort of a small park, emerged from the bubonic plague in the end of the 19th century, right? And that was actually a tool to basically take down buildings, to make space for public use. So it has been historically in Hong Kong a tool to mitigate urban density. as you wish, social distancing, right? It has also been a tool in the 1970s, where an analysis of several older neighborhoods had very bad results on, air quality and things like that, right? So back then, actually, that was used on a larger scale to actually put more sitting out areas in these specific neighborhoods of the city, where the living standards were very low. So I think now, 2021, and experiencing this pandemic and all these requirements to look differently in how we use space, I think we can look into the sitting out areas again.